Hi green lovers, I've got some beautiful cover crops growing in these 3 raised beds, and it is late winter, or feeling like it's going to be spring pretty soon. In fact, my last frost date is the end of February and today is the end of January. So between now and then I need to start doing something about my cover crops, because the idea is that you want all of this wonderful biomass to be incorporated into the soil, into the top layers of soil, and decompose in preparation for your fresh plantings. So what I am going to do today is I am going to be terminating one of these beds because I want to get this ready for a lot of my spring vegetables, my lettuce and some of my brassicas, kale, etc. So I want to get this bed ready, and it takes between 2 to 3 weeks for the decomposition to actually start to happen. So I'm going to terminate this one bed and kind of show you what it looks like in a couple of weeks, and I'm going to wait a little bit more on these 2 beds because I don't need them so urgently just yet. But the idea is that you need to terminate cover crops before they start to flower, because once they start flowering, all of that great nutrition that they have built up in their roots is going to be expended in creating the flowers and then the fruit of the plant. In this particular case, this is a bell bean, and you really want to retain that nutrition in the soil. So before I go ahead and terminate the cover crops in this bed, and I'll show you exactly how I do that, I am actually going to pull out one of these plants. This is a bell bean, and I'm going to show you what the root structure looks like. So these little pinkish nodules that you see, these are the nitrogen fixing nodules. The soil bacteria called rhizobia has a symbiotic relationship with the bean plant, and it helps capture that nitrogen and fixes it in these nodules, and then later on becomes available to the soil or the soil life. So that is what my intent is for these particular cover crops. This is a premium soil building type of cover crop that I got from Peaceful Valley Farms in California, and it is intended to be a nitrogen fixing type, and I need nitrogen in my soil. My soil tends to be low on nitrogen. It's a rich clayey soil, but it is usually lacking in nitrogen. That's the main thing that I need to augment the soil with. So the biomass as well as the nitrogen fixing nodules will help add that nitrogen back to the soil. So I'm going to be using this flat-edged shovel in order to terminate these cover crops, and the way I'm going to be doing it really is I'm just going to be breaking these at the surface of the soil. And I'm going to go throughout the bed. I'm doing this one-handed, so it's a little bit hard for me. This is a heavy shovel, but I am going to go ahead and do this in my entire bed and just let this lay for the next couple of weeks or so. And during that time, what's going to happen is this is going to cause all of those wonderful worms and other critters to come and try to start decomposing the plants that I have just killed off. But it will leave the rich roots in the soil, and those will decompose within the soil, and it will release the nitrogen into the soil. So that's the idea. So let me go ahead and finish this off camera. Okay, so I finished the job. I almost felt sorry to do this, even though that was why I created the cover crop layer in the first place, was to add all of this wonderful biomass back into the soil. But they've been growing so beautifully that anyway, they are now cut down and laying on the soil here, and I am going to let them decompose for a while. Another way to do this, folks, is to bring your lawnmower and cut it down. And then what I like to do in that case is to actually take the material and dump it in my compost pile and let it decompose there, and then I bring it back into my garden beds and I layer on a nice thick layer of compost. So that's another way to do it. Now, I made a more in-depth video on cover crops and why you need them in your garden, and I will put a link to that at the end of this video. And the last thing you want to do is cover it up with some sort of a tarp, or in this case I just found some black plastic bags lying around my yard and I put them down here. I put some pots on top of them just to hold the bags down. And let me show you what happens after maybe a month or so of this tarp or this plastic sheet sitting on top of these cover crops. Okay, so I'm inside my hoop tunnel where I've put some plants to kind of overwinter. Some of them are doing okay, some of them not so good. But anyway, what I really wanted to show you was the plastic sheet that I put underneath these plants and what's going on under the plastic sheet. There you go, folks. This is what happens excuse the potato root, but this is what I am after. These earthworms have populated this layer because it was protected under this sheet, and so it kept them warm, and they came up and they worked their magic all through winter. And this here, folks, is a beautiful thick layer of 100% worm casting. So this is how I vermicompost over winter. I'm fortunate to live in a mild climate that I can do this. I know that not all of you can do this depending on which part of the country you're in, but really, as long as you give the worms some protection in a mild climate, they will thrive through winter and they will do absolutely wonderful things for your soil. And that's what's going to happen to my cover crops in about maybe a month or so. I'm not going to wait that long, but I'm just going to wait long enough that the worm activity is going to start and that wonderful soil microbiology is going to start to build, and then I'm going to start using it to plant out my lettuce and my kale and all my other wonderful spring vegetables. Now this here has not exactly been cover cropped, it's more been layered with a thick layer of mulch. But I did want to show you what happens when you layer on mulch or cover crops or anything that worms enjoy, is that they do come in large numbers and start to decompose this material. And if I dig in a little bit here, you can see there are plenty of worms, and they are wriggling and rolling all over the place here. And that is exactly what is going to happen in that bed that I'm going to rest for a couple of weeks. Is the worms are going to come and they're going to start decomposing all of those wonderful green fresh materials that I've broken into the top layer of soil. Folks, I like doing these show and tell videos because sometimes it's helpful to see things actually in action. So I hope you enjoyed this video and I hope you'll throw it a like. And if you want to actually learn more about cover crops and why you should be growing them, then check out the video in the corner right now. And until next time, live green and love your greens.